Well, hello. My name is Lisa Callahan, and I am the founder of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. And I want to talk to you about a topic today that is very interlinked with emotional eating. The topic is on perfectionism. And so, what we want to talk about is how emotional eating mixed with perfectionism is a recipe for disaster. Now, it's interesting because sometimes we might feel like, well, Lisa, I'm not perfect at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm a total flippin' mess. Like, I can't get my you know what together to save my life. I'm losing things, I'm breaking things, I'm just all over the place. I certainly don't have any control over my eating. So, how can you call me a perfectionist, or how can you even suggest that these two things tie together? And it's really interesting because as we start to understand like a broader spectrum of where it is that you might be taking the things that you think you're not good at and eliminating your ability to be able to go into things from a perspective of not being perfect. Like sometimes we kind of hold ourselves back from things. We start to label ourselves, we start to blame ourselves, we start to tell ourselves that we're not good at this or that. And it's interesting because even though we might not think that that's about perfectionism, it absolutely is about perfectionism, because if you felt like you could just take risks and take chances and just trial and error and do the things that you say you want to do without having to put this feeling of that you have to do it all or you can't do it at all. And so if you start to be able to see the interrelation between the two, whether or not you're a personality that has to have everything like in mint perfect shape and you have to know where everything is and you have to itemize things and make sure that they're in the right spot, and like that would be what somebody could be labeled as a perfectionist. But on the flip side of that, you could be just like not doing anything at all simply because you're afraid that if you don't do it right, then that's not going to be good enough. And so in the opposite sense, it's exactly the same thing. And it literally keeps you on a cycle, kind of like a Ferris wheel. And you start to relate your life to being good or bad. And so this is where the all or nothing mindset comes into place, and where the people who might even label themselves as being perfectionists versus the people who might label themselves about being a total disaster and not perfect at all, they're actually struggling with the same exact thing. And that thing is fear. And so when you have a fear that you have to do everything perfect, or it's just not going to be good enough and you have to be the best and you have to do everything right, it's the same exact fear as when you're like, I can't do anything right, so I'm just not going to try because I just know I'm going to mess it up. Right. So even though these two things seem like they're on totally opposite ends of the spectrum, they're on the same exact ride. They're on the same Ferris wheel. And so sometimes when you feel like you do have your shit together, you might feel like you're on the upswing of the Ferris wheel. And you might feel like you're at the very top and you're like, yeah, look at this. Like, look at me. I'm doing great. But that ride's got to come down. And when it comes down fast. It's literally like the Ferris wheel operator just went like, pushed it into fast gear, and just you come crashing down. And so you know that you have these high highs and you have these low lows, and that there really is no in between, because when you're crashing down, you know it's happening and you have zero idea how to stop it or even desire at that point to stop it, because now you're just like you're ready to bury yourself. You're ready to plow into the ugly dark feelings that come along with emotional eating. And that's what you're using the food to get you to, is the dark ugly feelings. This emotional eating pattern and habit has zero to do with the food. And it's okay if you don't believe me. It's okay. That is going to be a level of awareness that you'll have to decide whether it's valuable to you or it's not. And if it's not valuable to you, that's okay, because you'll just turn this video off and you'll be like, she's full of shit. And I'm going to turn this off and I'm not going to listen to her because I know it's about the food. And if I just stay on my diet and I just eat perfectly, I will be okay. The problem with that is that it's not sustainable. And that's when you keep going up and up and up and up and up that Ferris wheel. You get to the top, you're there, and you're like, see, I can be good. I am good. I can eat well. And then right back down. And so I want you to think about how many times you've been on this ride over and over and over and over, and how exhausting it is. I stayed stuck on that Ferris wheel for about 30 years, and I would not have pegged myself as being a perfectionist. I really thought that I wasn't judgmental. I thought that I was totally fine with anything. I was the easiest going person in the world. I felt like I prided myself in being able to change myself because I understood, I saw things through a wider lens. I thought I did. And I was like, okay, I can change myself to fit in with these people. And then if I'm in this way, I could do that. Like I could hang out with the exercise people and, shoot the shit with the guys and have fun and whatever. But then I could go to a formal event and be with, some big business people, and I'd hold my own. I had this high standard for myself. I felt like I knew what was going on. And the truth is I knew nothing. And not only did I know nothing, but deep down inside, I didn't even feel as valuable as I presented myself to the world. So to the world, I felt like I had this high standard and I was going to be this fit athlete, and you could see me like knowing what to eat and knowing how to work out and knowing how to teach classes and telling everybody what to do. Like I had that role. If you're just coming into my world, you might not know that I was a personal fitness trainer for my whole career. I started when I was 19, and I did some bodybuilding competitions. As I grew into my career, I started doing racing. I started doing triathlons, and I went all the way up to Ironman level. I also I was a massage therapist, and I still am, and I take care of people's bodies. I help people. I used to coach little kids. Like I have done so many things in my life that would put me at a very high level. And so, with that being said, I presented myself to the world as knowing what to do. If somebody needed help with something, come to me. I can help you. I'm logical. I'm clear-minded. I can tell you what to do. But at the same time, deep down inside, I didn't believe what I was presenting to the world. And that's why for all of those years that I looked like I had it all together, all of those years, that's when I was at the height of my emotional eating issue. Because what I was showing to the world and what I was trying to do wasn't real, and it wasn't sustainable. So I couldn't take what I was holding myself accountable, like up on this pedestal almost. I wasn't the same person on the inside, because to myself, I was showing a version of myself that I would never show to anyone else. Never. If you would see me sitting there eating cookie after cookie after cookie, sometimes not even like chewing, right? You're chewing, and as you're chewing, you're trying to get the next one in. Like I couldn't shove it in fast enough. And when I was in that state, literally, like if something fell on the floor, I'm picking it up. Like I'm eating dirt off, like cookies off the dirty floor. I didn't care, because at that time I wasn't within my integrity. I wasn't presenting myself to anybody but me. And who I showed to myself was that other side. So the perfectionist went away, and I was just left with me. And when I realized that I didn't really like myself that much, that was a tough thing to handle, really. It was like, wow, like like all of a sudden I felt like I knew everything. And then suddenly I felt like I knew nothing. And so it was a really interesting piece being able to come back down from this place where I put myself and I put my standards so high, because I realized that while I was setting my standards so high, I was also judging other people because I was pitting myself against them. It was like, well, this is that type of person, this is that type of person. And I kind of feel like I got this idea from when I was a little kid. I like decided, I was like, okay, well, that guy's not going to college. This one's going to be whatever. This one's only concerned about that. This one. And so I judged people my whole life. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I certainly would never have thought that I was judgmental, but I was, because I decided who I wanted to be in comparison to what it was that I saw and how I fit those people into my mind. Well, that caused me to be afraid if I didn't do that. So it caused me to feel like I had this high level for myself, like this standard of who I was going to be as a person. But what it didn't allow me to do was it didn't allow me to actually be a person, which means that I'm gonna I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna have flaws. I'm gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna do things that are going to, you know, hurt people that I don't want to hurt. I'm going to have to stop and pause for a second before I say something, or before I make a decision that's not going to be within my best interest. And back then, I was making tons of decisions that weren't in my best interest. And now, because I can see things through a wider lens, I don't do that anymore. So now, when something feels off to me, I literally take a pause. I check in. I ask myself questions. I understand what I'm going through. I'm kind to myself. I'm supportive. I'm giving. I'm loving. I'm concerned. I'm caring. I care about me. And at this point now in my life, my integrity is so much more valuable to me than what anybody thinks of me. So now I'm able to feel more connected with myself, with others. I don't isolate myself anymore. So even though I felt like I was putting myself out there and I could be part of this group and part of that group, I continuously tried to change myself to fit in with those different groups and different people. And I kind of would pat myself on the back and be like, wow, like, okay, you did good. Like you said that funny joke and all those people laughed and it was, okay, you did good, Lisa. Like I judged myself so much. I was so critical. But then interestingly enough, just when I really did start feeling somewhat good about myself, that's when I would binge more even than when I did something that didn't feel good. Because it was almost as if as soon as I started to let my guard down and feel human, that's when I would kind of be like, wait a minute, you don't deserve this. And then I would talk myself out of it from a subconscious level. Like I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I'd end up in the same spot where again, I was kind of up on the high and then right back down. And it's like, I couldn't believe I was in this place again. I couldn't believe that again. It was like, but I was on such a good roll. How did that happen? How did I was eating perfect. Everything was going great. How did I end up here again? And so that's why I say that perfectionism and emotional eating are a recipe for disaster. So I want to give you a couple of quotes. First of all, well, write yourself this note. I want you to ask yourself, how are you using perfectionism to hold you back from getting the things that you say that you want? Ask yourself that question. How am I using perfectionism to hold myself back from getting myself the things that I say that I want? Because a lot of times we'll be like, oh, no, I can't do that. Like if I'm a perfectionist. So, I'm not gonna, and we label ourselves. How are you labeling yourself in the opposite way and being like, no, I'm not smart enough. I can't, no, I'm too much of a mess. I don't know how to cook. I don't know what I'm doing, How are you using kind of the flip sides of the same thing and taking it and holding you back from allowing yourself to grow in the way that you would like to? So think about that. Okay, that's step one. So how asking yourself also how honest that you want to become with yourself, because so many times we use lots of fears to keep us stuck, and we take those fears and we develop them into somewhat of a story. We start to tell ourselves this story and we start to say, well, if it wasn't for this, then I'd be, right? So I want you to ask yourself, like, how many times do you say, like as if you could take the excuse and see, like, what would I have if I didn't have to think that this was the thing that was holding me back? So I want you to be able to open your mindset to ask yourself some questions, like, if you might say, like, well, I can't change anything because I live with 4 other people and I can't change what they're eating, and they're bringing garbage into the house. And so I have no choice. I just have to eat what's here. I can't do anything about it. And so if that's the case where you're saying something like that, I want you to be able to think about being honest with yourself, because is that really true? Or is it just that you might be afraid that if you make the commitment to eat a certain way that's different than the rest of the people in the house, that maybe somebody might make fun of you? Someone might be like, what are you, on a diet? What are you doing? Right? And we tend to feel like we sort of want to fit in with the crowd. And so it feels uncomfortable when somebody's like making mention of it. I know that a lot of women that I work with struggle with weight loss because they feel like as soon as they start to lose weight and somebody says something to them, like, wow, Judy, you lost, looks like you lost some weight. And we take that and literally like turn it into, oh my gosh, like, what happens if I put on a pound? Then someone's going to notice that I did that, and then I'll look like a failure. And then, right? That's perfectionism. and it's holding you back because you're not allowing yourself the freedom to organically be vulnerable in whatever you're doing. So you feel exposed, you feel naked, you feel like you're being seen, when the perfectionism allows you not to be seen. It allows you to withdraw. It allows you to isolate yourself. It allows you to hold yourself back and to talk yourself out of things. So then if you do want to, like, let's say, do something social, you might be like, maybe I'll call. No, they probably won't want to hang out or do it, and you start to talk yourself out of stuff. And this is where the fear comes in, because if you can't have it like perfectly matched with what it is that you feel like you're going to experience, you won't even try it at all. Like, you won't allow yourself to be organically human because you've got so many parameters of which you want to stay within what your mindset is telling you need to stay in. That's perfectionism. So I'll read you a couple of quotes. Practice opening your heart to your own closed-heartedness. And really what I mean by this is practice giving yourself the same love and support and even advice that you would give to someone that you love. Because if you knew that someone else that you loved was holding themselves back because they were afraid of being judged, of being, looked at in a different way, of not fitting in, of not belonging, of not feeling connected, you would feel sad for that person, and you would want to do anything you could to end their insecurity, to end their pain. You would want to do that. And yet, if you don't see that within yourself, and you don't recognize that you must be able to open your heart, then it's closed hearted. Like, you're actually being mean to yourself. And if you're going to be mean to yourself, then it's not going to feel good on the flip side of the coin, right? No matter what you do, when you're being mean, or when someone's being mean to you, it doesn't feel good. When that person is the voice inside of your head, and you're telling yourself the things that are not, they're like meant to make you feel bad about yourself, and then you have to admit that you're choosing to continue to hold yourself back from getting to your goals, from getting to the place that you say you want to go. So everything that you want is on the other side of fear. So start to think about things, and start to think about how your mind is working, and how you might be holding yourself back because of fear. So start to think about it. It's like, well, what am I afraid of? Like, why wouldn't I just, if my family's buying all kinds of groceries and stuff that I don't want to eat, like, what would be wrong with saying, you know what, grab a bag of apples while you're at this supermarket, and how about one of those almond butters with no sugar? What would be wrong with that? Like, having a little snack, of almonds and apple, like, it's okay. It's okay. And maybe you changing what you want for yourself might invite someone else to be like, hey, that looks good. Can I have an apple too? Right? And so sometimes we feel like we have to do it all, or we're not going to do nothing. And I feel like that's not valuable, because I feel like that's fearful. And so I want you to be able to step to the other side of fear. And I want you to think about the flip side of the coin. The flip side of the coin is love. So how can I make the most loving decision for myself to get me towards my goal? And let your goal be to love yourself. If your goal is to love yourself, and you're able to take that space and be vulnerable and sit in it and allow yourself to be human, the feelings that you have about emotional eating will start to dissipate, because you won't be wanting to get to the bad feelings on the other side of the choices that you're making when you feel like you're in emotional disarray. And if you lower your expectations of yourself, and you can take the high standards that you might put for yourself as a perfectionist, and you can take that down, you'll see that you're going to free up a lot more space of things that seemed like they were real problems before, but now they won't be as problemsome, because you won't have to think about them anymore. So there's a quote by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she says that I think perfectionism is just fear, all dressed up in fancy shoes and a mink coat. And at the underside of that fear, the real problem is that it's the emotional angst of feeling like I'm not good enough, and I'm never going to be good enough. And if that's where your mindset is going, then that is going to keep you stuck, because at the end of it, your goal, your ultimate goal, subconsciously, will just be to support that fear. And you'll continue to do things to prove that you're not good enough, and you'll never be good enough. And I feel like, for me, at least, eating an entire box of cookies, that was proof all I needed. At the end of that box of cookies, when I took that last bite and I just couldn't seem to throw, like, even the last one, I was like, please, let me just throw this away. And I couldn't do it. Sometimes I did. When I couldn't, especially, it was like that last bite. It was just like, oh, like, it felt like I just shot myself. It was awful. It felt awful. It was like, and then once you get to that place, now you turn to the dark side, and it's like, well, all already screwed up, might as well. And that's when you're going into, oblivion, which doesn't feel good. And then it takes you really forever to get out. It just does. It's such a difficult piece, and that's where we have like, well, I'll start again on Monday. And now it's like Thursday, and now you've got like the next 4 days to basically be in a binge cycle, The other thing is, that quote is from Brene Brown. She says, perfectionism is like a 20-ton shield that we use to protect ourselves from getting hurt. But we think that it protects us from getting hurt, but what it really does is it protects us from being seen. And the truth is that we are actually trying to protect us from being seen by other people in the same light that we see ourselves. Because if we see ourselves as not worthy, not lovable, not, acceptable or bad, like we don't want people to see that in us. So we will protect that piece, and we only show ourselves that version of us. And that's not okay at all. So, and that's why it feels so heavy. It feels like a 20-ton shield that you're just like, okay, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me, because I know who I am, right? And it doesn't matter when you get compliments, or you might get a promotion at work, or you might get, somebody says something nice to you, and then you almost push, well, you push it away. How many times has someone said to you, wow, you look great today, I like that shirt, or whatever, you're like, oh, this whole thing, that's perfectionism, right? Comparing yourself to others, perfectionism. If somebody says something to you and you reject that, that compliment, let's say, that's because deep down, you're not feeling that about yourself. And you've got to put the shield up, because if you felt like you accepted that position, that would be difficult because you don't believe it. So it would be hard to be able to say like, well, oh my gosh, now I have to be everything to everyone all the time. And that seems exhausting, right? So we try and do the best we can to show other people the version of us that we would like to be. But then to ourselves, we show the version that is the least appealing version of ourselves. We show that to us. So this is another quote from Brene Brown. She says that you must think like, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging. And this is really what I would like you to start to believe about yourself. I want you to start to change your mindset. I want you to start to say to yourself, I am worthy of love and belonging. I am worthy of love and belonging. I am worthy of love and belonging. And even if you feel like you're not right now, keep saying it. Just keep saying it. It will click. It will shift your mindset. You continue to tell yourself, and then every time a thought pops into your head where you're like, yeah, but what about that time? And what about this time? And you're not worthy. And what are you talking about? Every time that comes in, I want you to send it into a red balloon in your head and just send it out. Red balloon, send it out. Red balloon, send it out. You might have 15,000 red balloons just leaving your head. You have to clear out some space in your mindset in order so that you can take in a new thought. Think about it. If you have too many things, too many packages you're carrying, and you want to pick something else up, you've got to put down one of the packages so you can pick up something new. Well, if you've got all these thoughts in your head, you have to take them out. You've got to get them out of your head so that then you can bring in a new thought. So if you want to bring in, I am worthy of love and belonging, you're going to have to put out the thought that, I'm bad, I'm not good, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that. Like, you've got to start taking those thoughts away. So that's where we begin. We start to ask ourselves a question. We start to say, is this thought meant to help me grow? Or is this thought meant to keep me stuck? Once you can identify if that thought is meant to help you grow, it's because it makes you feel good about yourself. You want that. That if you don't feel good about yourself, if it's a thought that's like, yuck, that's not a thought that you want to keep. It's not valuable. So I want you to think about these things as food for thought. And so think about it. If something, looks like crap and tastes like crap and like leaves a bad taste in your mouth, you'll know it, because if you said the words out of your mouth to someone else and it didn't make you feel good about yourself, like if you said something mean to someone, you'd kind of be like, oh, why did I say that? Or if somebody said those words to you and you were like, wow, like why are they saying that to me? That's so mean. Like, think about the words, think about the mean girl words, and then just become aware of how you're using those in your own mind. So that way you'll be able to understand with a new level of awareness where it is that you're eating those words, right? You're eating those words. And so if you're eating a bunch of negative words, well, your body is going to be filled with negativity. And so we want to be able to flip that. We want to eat a bunch of positive words so that way we can move the negative thoughts out of our mind. And the more you move the negative thoughts out of your mind, the less you're going to judge yourself and others for being perfect or not perfect. So catch yourself in the act of this. Catch yourself in the act of judging. Catch yourself in the act of blaming. Catch yourself in the act of shaming. Catch yourself in the act of guilting. Catch yourself in the act of thinking about past memories. Catch yourself in the act of regretting. So think about all of those things as you have thoughts coming to your mindset, and try and let some of those other thoughts go so that you can pick up the new thought, I am worthy of love and belonging. And what I would suggest is that you write it on a piece of paper 30 times every day. I said, every day. And if you feel like this is a lot of time spent, well, at least it's time feeding you emotional energy, right? Because what would you be doing with that time instead? So you have to be able to see that there's an exchange of energy, right? So if that time, right, if it took you 20 minutes to write down, I am worthy of love and belonging, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do this every day. Well, what would you be doing instead? Flipping through Facebook? Like watching television? Eating? Like, what would you be doing instead? Right? So let's have at it. Let's just say, like, okay, well, if I don't sit here and write this down right now, what am I going to do instead? Like, seriously, ask yourself that. And then make time for it, because you have to be able to believe it in order to be able to see what you want for your future. This is for you. This is for you and you alone, because you deserve love and belonging. All right. Happy day. See you next time. Bye now.